Solid drawing in animation. So, CurePod I also added to the prompt to include references to Disney, Pixar, movies, anime, and video games because this is where a lot of our character designs are coming out of, our very unique character shapes. And I think that will help us better understand what solid drawing is in our animated sphere here. That is so loud. Don't email me. Okay, anyway. So, I'm curious, what do you think solid drawing means in animation specifically? 3 minutes on this. Tell me, you can recap the video, you can tell me what you think it means in your own experience. I am interested to know. Okay. So, this is going to show us everything that different classmates are thinking of the definition of solid drawing. I want you guys to vote on the one that you agree with the most. You got a minute and a half to do so. We'll talk about it in that time. 1 minute and 1/2. All right. So, drawing in a 3D world in mind, I reference all the time that our animations, when they start, should be based on our real world, since that's where they came from initially. Drawing things with perspective and other things in the fore/background, so the front and the rear of the scene. Exactly right. Solid drawing is making sure that your characters have consistency in the 3D space that they occupy. So that means their body compositions or their different types of clothing or outfits they might be wearing, different types of items or tools or props they might be using. They're all going to have a 3D world in mind and keeping things in perspective so that it remains believable. We got to make something seem as if it has mass or weight or angling. You're animating around a certain point of view. Exactly. It's all the illusion of making things seem as if they have that mass or that weight because there's not a way for our audience to actually hold it in their hands, unfortunately. So you can use the principle of solid drawing, making sure your character has consistent mass, consistent weight to communicate what they're about. All right? 3D drawn shapes are compiled and used as a base, right? Using those basic shapes to put together a character so that they look three-dimensional in contrast to more flat, more 2D shapes. And then we also say a starting point that shows the features of the characters and its ability to make drawings seem realistic, making sure movement, arms move, is not symmetrical. Good job. Exactly. Okay. So solid drawing can be defined as a key animation principle that's going to add depth. A lot of these later principles are adding that spice and that flavor as compared to being basic recipes, right? Add depth and weight to characters and their scenes, which those key aspects including volume and mass. Let's think back to how these also relate to chemistry, to science, to physics, right? The similar rules that you study in those science classes should also be considered in classes like animation, in classes if you're in studio art, okay? These are things that you're going to be crossing over a lot in your life. Now, obviously I'm not a chemist, obviously I'm not a physicist, but in my experience with animation, in my experience with motion graphics, this is the thing that people are going to attach to. Because they might not know the actual definitions, your general audience, of the physics of the volume or the physics of the mass or whatever, but they know how it should work in the real world, and that's the basis you should be building these things on. Ask yourself, how is my animation working in the real world? Solid drawing is going to help you get to that point of real world sort of comprehension and understanding. Perspective. This is because since we're not using actual cameras in our animated works, we get to move it around really freely, really uniquely. Perspective is something that you definitely want to consider because proper perspective is going to ensure that objects are drawn accurately from any angle. Okay? Imagine different scenes that you've seen in an animated work or different parts of the story that you've seen in something animated. Think about how difficult that would be to do in the real world. It's because perspective is such a useful tool for solid drawing. Right? And then anatomy and proportion, also something that we're going to unpack in character design, is understanding the structure of forms like human anatomy, Even if your character is not necessarily human, you want to make it human enough that your audience can understand how the parts could work, how the character could function. Like if we think of Lilo and Stitch, for example, even though most of the characters in that show are aliens, they're not humans, they still have human-like similarities so that we as the audience can understand, okay, I generally know how they're going to move around on the planet that we're currently sharing. You can also think like, if any of you guys have played Halo, the anatomy of like the guilty sparks, the little monitors, they're just little like bowling ball spheres, right? They're not particularly human shaped because they don't think or act particularly like a human would. So shapes do a lot of communicating, even if you don't realize it. And solid drawing is going to be our way to explore how those shapes communicate in their things. Okay? In Disney and Pixar specific examples, the different toys in Toy Story are going to be animated with different weights and movements. Since Woody is a stuffed doll and he's stitched out of cloth, he's going to be a lot lighter than a plastic toy like Buzz, who has batteries and a bunch of different moving parts and all the armor and all the plastic and stuff. You can tell when Andy is playing with them, if you imagine, that Woody's a lot more flaily. The pieces kind of are going everywhere, whereas Buzz is a lot more sturdy, a lot more solid. That is because of solid drawing. That's because of the consistency that they're looking for with these basic shapes. The Lion King also uses accurate animal anatomy, even though they're clearly not a video or not a photograph of lions in The Lion King or any of those other creatures in The Lion King. They are close to their animal counterparts so that we as humans, that we as the audience can understand what's going on, especially how much they weigh, how much space they take up. Those are big things in solid drawings. How much does something weigh? How much space is it going to take up? Moving on to movies, anime, and video games specifically, films like Spirited Away are going to show intricate character design that has a variety of that solid drawing experimentation to it. If we think like Haku versus Chihiro, right? Those are two, Haku in dragon form, not in human form. Spoiler alert. Those are going to, Those two different shapes, those different solid drawings that those characters are made up of, communicate different things. Video games, we have Legend of Zelda. Solid drawing creates the immersive environments, the distinct different regions. The only Zelda game I've really played is Breath of the Wild. And since they have that more sketched, more painted sort of art style, I can tell which environment I'm in based on the things that are consistent, based on the things that behave the same way every time. And then we have the movies. We have the Blue Avatar, the James Cameron one, is going to use solid drawing principles for lifelike CGI. Those solid drawing principles being the Na'vi are based on, or they have a similarity to human shapes, so we're going to understand generally how they're going to interact with their world. There's a lot of assumptions that happen. There's a lot of letting your audience make the decision. But it is something you want to consider while you're doing these animated works, while you're designing these characters to be in your animated works. You want to think about how much space they're occupying and how they take up the space. So, I would like you to describe a scene from a movie, anime, or game where you have noticed solid drawing principles. Remember, solid drawing principles. Can anybody give me one of the... There's a V word, there's an M word. Give me any of those that are related to solid drawing. Sam, what you got? Volume. Zahid? Mass. What other sort of solid drawing principles have I talked about in the video? Ankita?
Volume.
Volume, yeah, we got volume. Nice. Think of those things. Okay? 3 minutes. Tell me about a scene in a movie, anime, or game where you've noticed some solid drawing principles. Go ahead. All right, so let's take a look at some of these examples you guys have put forth here. In Moana, Maui is larger and takes up more space. Exactly right. Solid drawing is going to be related to the space characters exist in. You get a sense of his size by how he looks in contrast to the environment, such as being taller than Moana or compared to the size or trees and animals. This is a good consideration of solid drawing because it's also thinking about the context of the scene, the space that a character exists in, as well as the other characters that are within that scene. right? If you think about if you play like Overwatch specifically, I think I've mentioned Overwatch before, but each of the different characters, or each of the different classes, each of the different roles, has similarities in their design. Like if you think about Reinhardt, the big shield guy, versus Tracer, the speedy one is big and one is small and fast. That's solid drawing, that's consistency. That's going to communicate the context that relates to your animated work. Good job. Let's go a couple more of these. Futuristic butts. Exactly. So that shows Miles has a weight. Miles has a density, because in Spider-Man, when he gets thrown into the bus reacts more than the Miles' body does. It's a great example. Snow White dances. That one doesn't look, not quite. Monsters Inc. Sully is another example of size compared to their other co-characters. The opening scene of Arcane, the impact is shown to have mass with the ground cracking. Exactly. Solid drawing can extend past characters too. It can also include props. It's this idea that things in the animated world have a basis or have consistency with things in the real world so that your audience can understand it. Okay? Avatar The Last Airbender, Appa has mass compared to some of the other creatures or the other characters. Guardians of the Galaxy 2, Peter Quill, spoiler alert, figures out his mother killed his father. The camera moves closer on the character to make it look like the background zooming past him to show contrast. This is a little bit more of a camera movement and a little bit more of a staging sort of thing, but it does show the weight of the emotional moment, which is also something that you could be considering with solid drawing. Peter Quill is a character that has morals and has a consistency to them. So this is also, in a way, an example of solid drawing. This one says, watched recently where the characters are almost always facing diagonal to the camera, so animators have to make it look properly 3D. Animal characters, Ratatouille, animals are shown to have less mass. This is true. True, true, true. It's used in Arcane a lot. Sounds like I need to watch Arcane. Okay, good job. Now, I would like you to draw a character or an object from your favorite media using solid drawing to show depth and perspective. We're going to go a little bit more time on this one so you have the chance. It does not have to be very detailed, but I do want you to prioritize that consistency, solid drawing. Try to get it as close as possible to your to the character you have in mind, or the reference, or the object. Perhaps some of the ones that were mentioned in these scenes over here might be useful to examine. All right, 5 minutes on this. Go ahead and get started. Does anybody want a tablet? I'll wait. If anybody wants a tablet, you can get one. Okay, cool. All right, I'm going to start this at 8:45. So, let's see. We got Sully from Monsters Inc. Let's ignore the feedback here. The feedback does have some interesting things to perhaps consider, but it says things like add shading or contours. This is not something that's possible in this activity necessarily, but it is something that could be added in the future versions of these drawings. But Sully is an excellent example because he has a lot of mass, a lot of weight, a lot of physical space that he occupies, which communicates a variety of different things. It can communicate strength. It can communicate like consistency. It can also communicate stubbornness, the inability to move, like Snorlax in Pokemon. It's a good job. All right. This is a good example of a character with consistent impact. You can tell, even though their size does not necessarily communicate how strong they are yet, because it's a basic layout, but the cracks do, and the speed of the punch as it impacts is a good example of solid drawing, because this is solidly communicating the mass and the weight of the impact. Going next, looks like a drawing from The Lion King using accurate animal anatomy. I know it's a little challenging to see on the projector screen, I apologize. The character's mass and form is consistent. Nothing is too spread out or too close in without intention, and the pieces are evenly laid out so that we can see the whole scene here. Good work. All right. We have a character Let me see. Got some depth as they occupy a space. Got some perspective lines showing them within this space. Not perspectively, that's not a word. But I can tell that they are a human-sized character because this room, I'm assuming, is also human-sized, and then some of these details around it. Or no, wait, maybe this is an impact onto the ground with some cracks in the floor. That also works. Both of those are good examples of solid drawing in the sense that they communicate that weight, that volume, that mass. What else we got? We got some height, we got some perspective. This tells me that we are on the ground looking upwards at this character. This character also basically has your average human shape, so I'm assuming they're about average human size, about average human strength, right? But I like the use of perspective to show solidly where we're at in the scene and how much of the scene is occupied by the character. We got Appa from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Very well done. Lots of mass here, lots of strength, lots of energy, stamina, things that are associated with larger creatures. All right. This one's got solid drawing because it is going to be consistent in the way that it only fits over a certain style of, or a certain size of character's head. I'm assuming that this is like a bag mask, like in that one part of Fantastic Four, where you can't find his suit. But good job. Could be a box as well. The box is consistent in its size. Boxes are notoriously things that don't usually change shape, like SpongeBob, for example. Looks like Totoro. Totoro's another in the large body character, showing consistency, warmth, sturdiness, but also could be stubborn, also could be frustrating, also could be a lot of different things. Got a circle work in progress, a character who's much taller. Mickey Mouse is consistent. He's got pieces that are always going to be moving as if they were based in real life. Kirby's another example. Even though Kirby's whole thing is that he changes based on what he eats, it is still going to have a baseline, still going to have a certain amount of space that they take up. We got an impact frame, and then we have a character. Looks like one has stuck into the ground and another has hit the ground, so one is a little bit more sturdy as they've broken through the surface of the earth or the ice maybe. And then a character that's not as sturdy, not as heavy, is going to bounce off the top. Great job, you guys. These are looking really good. We will, actually, I think we will do this one. So, I'll put the drawings back up on the board. Well, no, because the whole thing is we want to be anonymous. We're going to skip this one. Okay. This is very similar to your exit task that you'll have in my class today. So I'm curious, how can the principle of solid drawing, the ways that you've seen your classmates do it, the way that the videos explained it, the way that I have given you examples, how can that enhance your storytelling specifically in your animation? We'll go 330 on this one. There. You can, since before I reveal these, I want to show you to your exit task for today. If you go to the exit task discussions, somebody has already replied, which is okay. Where can you use solid drawing in your animated works has a lot of similarities with how can the principle of solid drawing enhance storytelling in animation. This one's more general. The exit task is more specific to your animated works, your original characters, your stories, your pieces that you want to put together. But in the meantime, let's take a look at the CurePod examples here. We got make the art more realistic and the viewer better understand the actions and personality of each character. Awesome job. Better demonstrating the physical abilities and attributes of a character through proper showing of proportions, volume, and perspective. Very nice. More realistic effect in animation and gives the viewer a better understanding of characters, which enhances storytelling. Perfect. It allows the viewers to see the character in the point of view they are supposed to view. Using stereotypes is an interesting example. I think stereotypes could also, a better word for that might be archetypes, because it's grouping, stereotypes can be considered negative. So I'm thinking grouping different characters together, like how I mentioned with the Overwatch example. This is the right idea. I just think there might be a more accurate word for understanding how the viewers can see the character in the point of view they are supposed to be viewed in, using archetypes is another word for that. Okay, what else we got? We can help direct the audience attention onto parts of an animation that are more important or refined, right? Some staging, some emphasis, some anticipation, all different other principal crossovers that might be happening here that are more important or refined than other parts of the animation. This also goes into the idea with smear frames and keyframing. You're starting to see how maybe things cross over a little bit here and there. But yes, solid drawing is going to help direct the audience's attention onto the parts of the animation, like the character, that are more important or refined than some of the other parts of the animation, like the in-betweens and the some of the scenery sometimes. Great job. Depicting correct body anatomy, it can help by conveying their personality and emotional state. Very true. It can make characters' dimensions look more realistic. Very true, very nice. It can make the actions of the character event, though they are not human or human-like, or the exact opposite. Even though they are human, it makes their actions look less human-like to emphasize that they are alien or they are mutants. Okay, so solid drawing being used to communicate something fantastic about our character, even though they are in a human shape, like maybe Rock Lee from, I think his name is Rock Lee from Naruto, with the weighted boots and clothes. Dragon Ball has that too. Once they take off their weighted clothes, even though they look like a normal human, they're going to be quite a bit stronger, quite a bit more powerful, even though that's not necessarily directly communicated. If a character is large, the viewer or other characters believe they're scary or dangerous, when in reality there's an equal chance they are shy and kind. This is true. Think Embarrassment from Inside Out 2. Big character, takes up a lot of space compared to some of the other ones, does not mean that he is large, scary, or dangerous. Shy and kind. Adding depth to the story, to the character, also adds to the story. Gives the grounding that other principles cannot. Very true. I like that word, grounding. That's a good amount of consistency. It's a good amount of predictability. All things that your audience is looking for. Audiences, as much as we love them, sometimes don't want to believe every single thing you say. So in your animated works, you want to have just a handful of things that they can chew and swallow, as compared to having too much to choose from and it gets overwhelming. And then you lose some of the value that you put into your work because the audience is having a harder time understanding it. That'll make more sense as we kind of talk more about, or if you decide to go more into animation, more into visual media, filmmaking especially. That'll make more sense a little bit later. Okay, great job, you guys. I am very proud of your work today, and I hope you are too. The rest of this time is yours to continue drawing, to continue practicing different principles. We'll have a project that is actually putting your skills to work. Probably get started, introduced Thursday, Friday, then we'll work on it next week. And we'll likely finish that one up before the break. So, use your time wisely. Check where you're headed for flex. We do have a lockdown drill today, so be aware of that. And good job today.